So, if you've read the Foundation books, you know that the Genetic Dynasty was one of the first and big changes to the TV adaptation. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about the brothers Cleon and why I think it's a bad idea. But as always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review, and if you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the channel, and if you make it all the way to the end, or even just the middle, leave a like on the video as well. As I said, the Genetic Dynasty is the first in a notable change of the Foundation novels. Well, that and a few characters that were male are now female, but doesn't matter, whatever. And for a story spanning centuries, coming up with three guys who are the same person is a great device in order to tell the arc of the Foundation story. It's a great way to help explain why the Empire will fall as well, and why the Dynasty was always going to fail. So stick with me as I'm about to do some deep personal exploration here. Not of me, but of the clones, and the original Cleon, and the changes to the Empire. So the clones date all the way back to, well, the original Cleon who wasn't a clone, but then, he was cloned, so debate on that, that's semantics. But the original Cleon, not happy with the Star Bridge being his legacy, he came up with the idea of the Dynasty, at least as far as we know at this point in the story. So while he'll die, he'll also live on, as the clones aren't just copies of his raw genetic material, but in theory they should all behave roughly the same way and think the same way that he did. And sure, over the decades and centuries, there's going to be events that unfold that previous versions of the clones wouldn't have experienced dealing with. Rebellions, war, disease, you get the idea. But the point is, and the original Cleon's point is that there'll always be the same person with the same point of view dealing with these events at the head of the Empire, then teaching the next day or dawn or whatever what he knows. And another reason for the clones existing is there's never going to be a threat to the Dynasty either, as there's never going to be a jealous sibling who says he doesn't want to be part of the family and runs off and signs a deal with Netflix, or an angry son that wants revenge on his dad, that sort of thing. But for better or worse, there will always be a continuity of just this one guy forever. No matter what happens. And while this is a good idea in theory for a long-term plan to keep the Empire running, it does create an also sort of immortality for Cleon. But the Empire is very short-sighted, or at least I should say the Dynasty is, and I'll explain why. Because, as I keep saying, I think the Genetic Dynasty was always destined to fail. And I'm not talking about Selden's plan or any sort of outside threat or violence or rebellion or even anything from within. It will always fail because society changes. But as they are effectively the same person, their perspectives are all roughly the same as well, and they don't shift as much as the society that they rule does. So what do I mean by that? Well, take a figure in history. I'm not going to get into the politics or anything like that. I'm just going to say Abraham Lincoln. But if he was around for a few hundred years, think of it this way: how would he have dealt with, say, multiple world wars, the threat of communism, women's liberation, gay rights? You get the idea. Because all these changes that happened in our society, for better or worse, shaped our world, our history, and future generations' views on both of those. And really think about that for a minute. While things aren't ideal today for a large element of the population all round the world, for most people, at least Westerners, that's us, probably you, this is the most advanced and progressive society has ever been. Look back 40 years to something like the AIDS and the HIV crisis, and look how that was handled then as compared to now. Today, while both conditions still exist, people are informed on them and have been educated on them. That's been passed down from generation to generation. Education and awareness was the key. But my point is, through generations, we've learned. We've learned how to progress in things like science. We've learned how to progress as a society, how to raise awareness for issues that we want. And honestly, most people, when they're living through changes in society, you don't really notice it. It's only later on, with the benefit of hindsight, you realise how important certain events, certain developments, and certain people are or were. Because these sorts of changes take a long time to happen because so many people need to accept the change and it needs to be passed on from one generation to another. So as one generation gets older and takes a back seat, much like Brother Dusk, a new generation steps forward into the lead, much like Day or Dawn. And this new generation comes up with fresh ideas and perspectives that hadn't necessarily happened or occurred to anyone before. And old ways are abandoned. Imagine how Ronald Reagan would react today to things like OnlyFans and Pornhub. He wouldn't have imagined those in his deepest, darkest nightmares. Society needs people with new ideas to push it forward and supporters of causes to create pressure and change. While the idea of the dynasty was to create an everlasting continuity of reign, it wasn't designed to adapt to the changes around them. The fact that this one person, although it is three guys and it is all technically a different person, again, depending on your point of view, semantics, all that stuff, they couldn't accept that the empire may fall, as it's completely opposed to the idea of the very fabric of the dynasty being built on. As long as there's a few Cleons about, everything will be fine, and as long as they're all the same person, there won't be any sort of betrayal from within. But the problem is, in Foundation Season 2, now that's not the case. The current Brother Day wants to end the genetic dynasty and create his own. Another factor in all this is by Day ending the dynasty, he's effectively given up immortality, as it'll mean no more clones of him. And that's a very big ask, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing Brother Day hesitate, and obviously the fear that Dusk and Dawn have as well. Because it's the only way of life that any Cleon has known in 400 years, so ending it is going to be absolutely terrifying, but it is absolutely what the society needs. If you haven't guessed, the point that I'm trying to make here is you need new perspectives and new points of view coming in every now and then to push change forward. It doesn't matter if that's in a reigning genetic dynasty or it's in a crappy office job. If you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you're not going to get any changes or any different results. And this is why I think the genetic dynasty was always doomed to fail. It's a good idea in theory. Over the long term, it's effectively the same person in charge with the same point of view that they had 400 years ago. Society is evolving and changing around them, and they aren't. And that's the thing that's going to end it, or at least drive it towards its end. While this might not be the way that the dynasty ultimately fails, it'll probably be from within. This is something that I think is definitely worth talking about because, again, the show doesn't really get into the expanded universe of the Foundation and other planets and how the reign of the clones affects them. We know that they aren't popular because there has been attacks and we know that there has been rebellions and there has been challenges. And this all points to the fact that it isn't going well for them, at least over the last century or two. But as always, these are just my thoughts on the clones and the dynasty. I want to know what you guys think in the comments below. If you haven't seen it already, I'm doing a weekly live stream on Foundation every Sunday. I'll put the times up at the end of this video. So if you want to get a bit more involved in the chat, make sure that you join me there. And if you've made it this far, as always, leave a like on the video. And if you haven't done it already, subscribe to the channel. My name's Al, thanks for watching.